Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers.
And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 126. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com, back here on this early Saturday morning episode of the Terrible Podcast. Dave, Day 2 of the 2025 NFL Draft is in the books. Pittsburgh making just one selection, but a notable one all the same in taking Iowa running back Kaleb Johnson, 83rd overall as the newest Pittsburgh Steelers. So the top two picks through the first 2 days are Derek Carman and Kaleb Johnson. Dave, how you doing? What are your thoughts?
Happy Saturday. I had my Friday was fantastic. I had a better Friday than Shedeur Sanders, I'm pretty sure.
Heyo.
Heyo. And got to play around. I got to get some tape together for myself and you and the other guys, and some full game links and some all 22. I got some data from Derek Harmon, all put together from play-by-play data from sacks and pressures and tackles for loss to make it easy for us to go through. And I got to even actually look at some of those plays from him, and got to really, because of the Steelers' long wait in between their third round pick, got to actually watch a little bit of the draft, and got to hear Art Rooney kind of tip what was going to happen, or what we thought was going to happen throughout the day, and kind of where they're headed now. So yeah, it's been a very enjoyable Friday, and we're recording this midnight 30 Eastern time right now, so I'll have to process this up and get it up for the people, but it should make our Saturday morning go a little bit better. The Steelers have, 4 more picks scheduled throughout this thing, and we'll see if they make any trades or whatnot, but we do have one new Pittsburgh Steeler to talk about today.
And he doesn't have to even change his uniform color scheme. That is Kaleb Johnson from Iowa, from black and gold with the Hawkeyes to black and gold with the Pittsburgh Steelers. 83rd overall pick, running back. Dave, no surprise. You knew they would take a running back at some point in the draft, likely sooner than later. Art Rooney essentially saying that before the draft kicked off, that running back, maybe quarterback, was going to be the pick in the third round. It's Kaleb Johnson who drops to them. To me, Dave, this is great value. I did not think Kaleb Johnson would be there at 83. Only, 6 running backs have gone through the first 2 days of the draft, which I thought would be a higher number just given the talent in this year's class, but it still kind of has that vibe of running backs being a bit devalued positionally speaking. So Johnson slips to Pittsburgh at 83. They pounce for sure, and they did so much homework on running backs. 9 came in for a visit, including Kaleb Johnson. Just my overall 10-second thought is old school to new school. Old school size for Kaleb Johnson, but new school, more dynamic, more burst than some of the other bigger backs Pittsburgh has drafted in previous classes. So that's what Pittsburgh is getting with Kaleb Johnson.
I'll let you talk me into thinking more running backs were coming off the board. Damn you. I told you that I thought that maybe only four or five might come off the board. You got to trust your gut sometimes. I put in all that work, and then I got cold feet on it, thinking, probably going to be 6 or 7 end up coming off the board. Let's start here. I thought Kaleb Johnson would be off the board second round, and certainly by the time the Steelers picked at 83. I would imagine you thought the same thing.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that at 83 running? You said running back?
No, I said for sure I thought he would be off the board by the end of the second round, and by the end of and definitely by the time 83 rolled around.
Sure, he was not. My expectation was he would be gone by 83. Correct.
And I certainly didn't think. Wait a minute. No, I take that back. There were how many out? There were 5 off the board by the time, because I'm not showing here because my guy RJ Harvey went earlier than I thought. there. So there were 5 off the board by the time the Steelers picked Kaleb Johnson. And if you would have told me, gave me a cheat sheet and said, Dave, 5 will be off the board by the time the Steelers pick at 83, I would have bet you money that Kaleb Johnson would have been included in that 5, but he wasn't. I think this is good value for them when it comes to the pick and the position. And if you were to go back to what the Steelers look for studies that you like to do, and if you would have went off the height and weight only, and he would have checked the boxes. The problem is he didn't do anything but run to 40, I don't think, through the pre-draft process there. So you didn't have a lot to go on. But had he done the bench, had he done the short shuttle, had he done the 3-cone, I think it's pretty easy to guess that he would check most of those boxes, if not all of them. And like you said, it's kind of old school there, kind of the old mold, if you will, about a bigger back here overall. And it is a little bit of the blend, as you'd like to say, kind of old school meets new school. While he is bigger, he kind of plays a little bit. He doesn't play up to his size as far as the physicality goes. But on the flip side, too, when you look at, we've talked quite a bit about the explosiveness factors. And, I think early on in this process, I posted that chart of the 10-yard and 20-yard runs. I'm pulling that up right now as well, too. When you look at his explosive 20-yard runs overall, he stacks up really nice in this class, a 6.3%. And when you look at a guy like Ashton Jeanty, 5.6. And look, what's all the stuff that you think about when you think about Ashton Jeanty this year coming out? Man, all those big runs that he had. Now, Ashton Jeanty did have a much better 10-plus yard explosive run rate. But when you look at for his career, Kaleb Johnson has a better explosive run rate of 20 yards or more than Ashton Jeanty does. He has a better explosive 20-yard rate than Quishon Judkins, who was drafted by the Browns, does. He has a better rate than O'Marion Hampton does. He has an equal rate to Travion Henderson when it comes to 20-plus yard runs. So what did we talk about when we talked about Steelers and running backs this year? Boy, hopefully they could get one that could deliver a higher rate of explosive runs, 20 yards or more. So he definitely checks that box. Would you like to maybe see his tenure? Here's the thing with him. He was either going to go 20 or plus yards or probably, 6 yards, and both are fine. I would say that more than anything, maybe you would like to see a little bit higher 10-plus run rate, but beggars can't be choosy here. We talk about explosive plays and this team wanting playmakers and more explosive plays, traditional 20 yards or more. He delivered them on 508 carries in college. So I think that's a starting point there. I think what's one of the other things we talked about Kaleb Johnson was, man, if the Steelers really want to get dedicated to wide zone, outside zone type runs, kind of stuff that Arthur Smith seemed to put aside in his first season with the Steelers. Well, this is the kind of back for that. This is a guy that likes a runway, patient runner. I think he became more patient in his final year at Iowa. And the other thing is he's scheme versatile. Due to that time at Iowa, ran mid-zone, ran regular zone, ran outside zone, and ran a little bit of gap zone as well, too. So you get a versatile guy as far as zone scheme goes. You get a guy that's young, 21 to be 22 in August, and you get a guy that has some explosive play tape in his resume.
Well said. And on that point about the lower rushes of 10-plus yards, I was listening to the Steelers YouTube channel, their coverage of the pick before the press conference Arthur Smith had to talk about the selection. And Mike Pursuta made a good point. And this might have been in Dane Brugler's draft guide, but some stat service or draft guy that said Iowa had one of the highest rates of running into stat boxes last year, which is a very Iowa thing to do. Heavy personnel, multiple tight ends, ground game, focused, and so it might be harder to get some of those 10+ yard runs when you're running into 8-man fronts, constantly not seeing the too high shells of more wide open passing offenses that are common in college football. So just kind of one thought there on Kaleb Johnson. But yeah, just good value overall. As you said, I remember a conversation we had pre-draft on Johnson was some of those perimeter runs is where you really saw him shine. And yeah, it's interesting. He has the size, but he plays a little more finesse. And that can be a little bit of a negative, but I think overall for what Pittsburgh needs, it's more of a positive. They wanted somebody that could, as you said, get a runway, get an open grass, and be dynamic and be explosive. Arthur Smith talked about, though, kind of from the power side of him, the size side of him was the fourth quarter production, where he really had good numbers in the fourth quarter to close out games, had some big runs late in games to seal the deal there. So, it's funny when I look at what they look for study, most of the running backs, I have them all listed in a Word document. Most of them are missing on height and weight. And Kaleb Johnson, one of the few who didn't, as you said, he didn't bench, he didn't do the vert, he didn't do the broad. And so that disqualified him from making that list, but still has that size at 6'1", 224, I think was his official listing at the combine that Pittsburgh likes. But you see a guy with vision and patience. I like his feet. He's got light feet to pick the hole, change directions, work laterally, and then get upfield. So it's an interesting run style because you wouldn't necessarily expect that from his frame, but that's a good thing because I think Pittsburgh needs something that's more than just kind of 3 yards cloud of dust. Now, is Johnson the most dynamic guy they could have drafted? No, there's Dylan Sampson, there's Bashal Toot, and I thought maybe Pittsburgh would go in that direction ultimately, but you just look at the quality of Johnson as a runner overall. Pittsburgh still loves kind of that tough mutter mindset playing in Iowa, playing in some cold weather, and so I think that all was attractive to Pittsburgh to make him the pick.
Looks like 191 zone runs last year, 48 gap runs. His yards after contact averages was a little bit better than what I remember on tape. I just looked it up here. It looks like 4.42 yards, and of the running backs with at least 50% or more of 375 attempts filtering out, those lower than that. He finished second behind Ashton Genty. So and this was 2024. I can pull 2023 real quick and see what it was there.
Yeah, now he wasn't as involved, wasn't as productive. He really broke out in 24. It's like Derek Carman, kind of those 2024 breakout performers.
Let's see here. I'm gonna have to go back and just look at. It's just gonna be too hard to sort it that way. There, just look at his career totals and all. But I mean, last year alone was indeed 20-something touchdowns on the ground. Holy moly! So this is a guy that's used to finding the end zone there for sure. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick here. Yards after contact for last year. Okay, that 2.62 in 2023 and 3.34 in 2022. So he really did break out, really showed a little bit more of that physicality. Of course, had a lot more attempts. Had double the attempts, I think, than he did in 2023 and 2024. But there's nothing wrong with 4.42 yards contact per attempt number when it comes to that. And we talked about seeing a lot of zone runs, so that's not going to be foreign to him. Had obviously career high, and look, you're going to have to work with him out of the backfield and things like that. Not really an accomplished receiver as probably you would expect coming out of Iowa there. But I think you hit on a good point too. This guy's used to working in heavier personnel groups, and everybody knows that Iowa kind of tight end you, and they're not afraid to have two tight ends up there, or sometimes an extra offensive lineman out there as well too. So I would say because of the scheme versatility and pro style offense and working with those kind of condensed formations, if you will, because of multiple tight ends, you get a guy that's kind of has worn a lot of hats there. And once again, he's only 21 years old, to be 22 in August. So you don't have a ton of mileage on him overall, and you are getting him coming off of slowly progressing up the chart, if you will, as far as good seasons go. 1,000-yard. More than 1,000 yards, obviously 1,500 yards, 6.4 yards. And then, it's exciting to think about if you can get in some games and start wearing some people down, about what Arthur Smith had to say about how he seems to get better as games go along.
It's really interesting as I think about it some more, those parallels between a Derek Carman and a Kaleb Johnson. Both, as you said, 21, both really took a big leap in 2024. That's when they really made their mark. Harmon transferred, Johnson stayed. But I wonder what changed for Kaleb Johnson to go from a pretty middling 2023 to that big lead the Big Ten in rushing yards and touchdowns and rushing touchdowns in 2024? Was that just simple growth and maturity? Did he change his body? Did something with the offense dramatically change at Iowa? Not 100% sure, but worth exploring. But I think with Harmon and Johnson, the hope and the goal would be two young guys who coming off really good seasons, that light started to come on for both those guys, but you think their best football is still ahead for Derek Carman and for Kaleb Johnson. So that's the exciting part there, in checking boxes for team need, for offseason goals, defensively, get stronger against the run, get younger along that defensive line, offensively, recommit to the run game, replace Najee Harris. That all makes sense. What are some of the NFL comps you've seen on Kaleb Johnson? Because I'm just trying to figure out, because I like comps. I know some people don't. I just think it's a nice, quick frame of reference for people to kind of understand the type of player that a team and fan base may be getting. And like I said, Johnson's skill set is kind of unique because he's that bigger guy, but runs a little bit smaller and lighter on his feet. I think, I mentioned, I think Joe Mixon. I've seen some Arian Foster comparisons out there.
Well, I threw out kind of, a Darren McFadden a little bit,
Yeah, I just didn't think he had that crazy, crazy long speed like
Right.
that. I know he talked about a little comparison to Le'Veon Bell. Maybe there's a little bit of a relationship there. I think he had said he had a conversation with L. Bell before the draft. I know Nick Saban kind of had a comparison to Najee Harris, which might sound scary, but that was to Najee Harris at Alabama, who dominated down there. So it's a much higher compliment than I'm sure Steeler fans will interpret it. So, I know it doesn't matter too much, but I think his running style is unique. And just, he did that big 2024 season. And I think, again, there's that blend of the old school values of Big Ten football, cold weather, mutter, but this is not just a plotter. This is a guy that give him some runway and he can really break it.
Look, I'm excited to see some outside zone runs, you know, instead of all that mid zone stuff and that split zone. And maybe they can start pulling the guards a little bit more too, But you go back to some of that older tape of Arthur Smith and liking that wide zone and outside zone. And Arthur Smith admitted himself. He and props to him. You don't want to necessarily force the round peg in or a square peg in the round hole and all. But he said as much this afternoon or tonight when he talked, saying he pivoted that familiarity and really having to adapt to the personnel is kind of why we haven't seen that yet. And he's got to be excited, and he called him probably the most complete back that he's seen in a draft in a while. Be interesting to go back to see what he said about Robinson coming out, right? As well. But this is a guy that you see that wide zone on the tape. You see the patience and all like that. You see what happens. He's able to read. He's able to read that stuff if teams want to cheat it and try to get out ahead on that wide stuff. He knows how to cut it back. And the flip side, if they're slow getting off and these offensive linemen can turn a guy back, well, he knows how to hit that as well too. So you got to have patience to be able to do that. Know that trust your offensive linemen on those outside zone, wide zones, whatever you want to call the type of situation. And when he does get ahead of steam up and gets a lane, that's where he's breaking his runs off at.
What are some deficiencies in his game? I think we both like to pick, just kind of walk through pretty thoroughly his strengths, some weaknesses. I still see a
Pass
guy that is,
protection.
yeah, it's not totally well rounded, as you said, not a huge asset in the pass game. I thought he got more involved in 2024. Only had like 7 receptions or 5 receptions his first 2 years at Iowa. As you've noted, it's such a run heavy offense. I think pass pro, he ducked his eyes too much. I think they asked him to cut block quite a bit too, which you just don't see at the NFL level. You don't see guys cutting. Certainly not going to do it in practice, and so it really doesn't translate to the game all that often. So it seems more early down value for Kaleb Johnson, true first, second down, but that's okay because Jalen Warren's been a third down back throughout his Steelers career. Kenneth Gainwell's played on third downs. He's a guy that'll get involved in the pass game. Warren's capable of doing that too. So those are not deal breakers for me, but there are some things to work on to become a more well-rounded player instead of just a good runner.
Look, he's a guy you can throw out there in week 1,
Yeah.
if you need to take some of the onus off of Jalen and Jalen Warren. And Arthur Smith talked about, hey, we're not so much worried about his pass protection yet. That hopefully that will come and all. They've got Jalen Warren, that the one of Jalen's strengths is pass protection and that phase of the game there. So you can get him on the field as a rookie, start getting him carries. You can probably cut Cordell Patterson tomorrow, or the Tuesday after the draft and all like that goes. But I would just say, the pass protection obviously has got to get better. You're going to have to get him more refined in what to do in the passing game should he have to be out there. But that won't be an early focus of their for them with him. You want to get a good first and second down back overall. I will be interested. I don't know this aspect of his game that I want to go look for now that we know that he's a player. We can go deeper into the tape there. How was he when things when disaster strikes?
Yeah.
How
Ability
is
to create.
right? How is he when somebody misses the block in the backfield?
Mhm.
How is he at creating something out of things beyond his control when things go bad? I think that's going to be one of the biggest things that I look for when I go back on the tape that I haven't done enough homework on with him. But now that we know who he, the pick and everything that we can go deeper in that. We pull all larger selections of the tape. I want to see how he is when disaster strikes.
One other thing to like about him, ball security, 0 fumbles on 240 carries and 22 receptions last year. So don't have a giant sample size because he wasn't a full-time back the year before. I think he had 2 fumbles in 2023, looking at some of the stats right now, but also really important. We talked about some of the running backs, RJ Harvey, Bashal Tootin, guys that were explosive and exciting, but there were the ball security concerns with them. And number one job for running back, job security is ball security. Eddie Faulkner gets as innovative and creative with ball security drills throughout training camp, throughout different practices to really emphasize that point. It's been an issue for Jalen Warren occasionally too. So did you want to draft another running back who might have a similar problem and maybe you don't trust anybody at some point during the season if there was a cold streak where guys just can't handle the football. So should not be an issue with Kaleb Johnson.
All right. I want to look at some of the tosses. I know I've seen quite a bit of his outside zone runs. I might have to look for the tosses and see how he does there.
I liked his overall vision and patience. Just think he
Mhm.
set his blocks up well, found the hole, and that ability to kind of get skinny and then burst through the other side. I just thought his lateral quickness, his burst, the jump cut was again things you just don't always see from guys of his frame. I just like the explosiveness, lower body, and his light feet.
He talked about this during his presser as well too, and a note that Dane has in his profile. His running back coach was Liddell Betts.
Yeah, I didn't realize that till I read
Hmm.
the conference call and I saw
I
him say
didn't
Coach
either.
Betts, and I was like, "Dang, is that because he went to Iowa too, Liddell Betts?" And so you just got some good quality coaching guy that was in the NFL for Liddell Betts with Washington for a time, and so that's always encouraging when you have guys that have been well coached. I think that applies with Derek Carmen too at Oregon. So just trying to create a cleaner projection so when these guys get to the NFL, this is not new. They're not coming from super gimmicky college offenses. Oregon's defense was pretty pro style. Iowa's offense is pretty pro style. And that's just going to help these guys hit the ground running.
I guess another thing, just not that he asked to do it a lot, but just probably blocking. out in space and all like that. I haven't really looked at any of that stuff. He's obviously not going to be asked to block a lot outside of learning to pass protection. I would imagine he's going to get his fair share of work in pass protection and backs on backers come Friday night lights and stuff like that to see how he holds up and see if they can get him to hold his head up a little bit higher and not cut block so much, like you said. But yeah, look, I mean, I think top to bottom, we both thought this was a guy that was going to be off the board come 83, and like the fact that scheme diverse, and maybe we'll see more outside zone stuff. How many years have we been talking about, even when Mike Munchak was the offensive line coach and all, man, we like to see some outside zone. They just never really had the good personnel since really Le'Veon Bell left and all to do that kind of stuff and all. So this will be exciting. You'll probably see Arthur Smith put some of that stuff in that we've seen him do at other places and in the coaching tape seminars and along those lines. So you get you still get a guy semi-explosive back in Jaylen Warren, and this should be a nice little 1-2 punch.
And I will say, even though I don't think he has the power that you would necessarily expect, he's got a really mean stiff arm, and some of those open field, third level type tackles that DBs would try to come down, safeties try to stop good runs from being great runs. He'd throw that right arm out and stiff arm safeties into the ground. And so that's kind of his calling card in terms of that power, strength, physicality aspect, which should be exciting, which you talk about. How do you get those explosive runs? It's not always at the NFL level you can just get a wide open hole that a running back can just zip through. Usually it's a receiver making a downfield block or that running back breaking that last tackle in that third level to take that 10-yard run into that 30, 40, 50-yard run. So the guys that can create with an offense that hopefully will get involved and play selfless and, have those RBIs, as Arthur Smith talks about, those kind of, those guys who assist and create those blocks, that create those big plays. But Johnson can do it on his own too. There's some open field ability whenever he gets out in space.
Just finally catching up on some of this Dane Brugler, what he wrote about him as well too. He has his play style reminiscent of DeMarco Murray.
Okay, yeah. Again, the comps will probably be over the place, but I dig that.
All right. That's all I got till I dig deeper on him. Once again, I want to see, when things go bad, how he does in the backfield, sidestepping some stuff and getting out of turning negative stuff into at least back to the line of scrimmage or get some positive yardage out that way and pull some of those gap runs and have a look at that. But it's going to be easy to find a lot more tape on him coming out of the Big Ten for sure.
And I think even Steve P, from formerly a PFF, even compared Johnson to Joe Mixon, which was my comp for it. So I feel better about my comp right now on Kaleb Johnson. But yeah, great value, fills a need, good player with upside. Have to like it.
All
right, Dave, let's talk briefly about day number 3. We have a lot more picks to talk about for our next episode. Steelers, barring trades, are picking in the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round. You have defensive line addressed at least once. Running back addressed, probably not going to take running back again. What other positions could be addressed? What other prospects could specifically be targets?
Oh, I'm going to have to catch up with who's still out there and all, but Art Rooney spilled the beans about running back and then potentially quarterback, but he did say if we draft a quarterback, it's going to be somebody that's not going to play and that you try to develop. So does that mean I would like to think that's going to happen 4th or 5th round at this point? I would be surprised if we're after the next 2 picks, we're not talking about a quarterback. I think Will Howard's definitely in play. I think McCord, obviously in play. Quinn Ewers, I think, obviously still in play. And I know Sanders is still out there. I mean, if Sanders, at what point does Sanders become, oh, we got to take him now?
I have no idea. No one expected him to get to this point, so I'm not going to pretend like I know where this fall stops.
The way Art Rooney said, commented on him, it sounded like he's going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler, at least not in the 3rd round. So, look, long story short, I think they take a quarterback in the next 2 picks, and I think you are looking at someone. I mean, Milrose off the board at this point. I think you're looking at one of Howard, McCord, and Quinn Ewers, to be honest with you.
I'll still put Sanders on the board just because I don't know where to put him, so I'll just put him in play. I think Pittsburgh drafts a quarterback, and they've certainly done some homework on Shedeur Sanders. I think it's just tougher at this point. Honestly, we had this conversation quickly before we started recording. Was if you love Shedeur Sanders, the player, you thought he was a franchise guy, willing to take him first, even second round, you're more willing to accept the media craziness and everything that kind of comes along with that. The juice is worth the squeeze for a guy that you believe can be transformative for your franchise. Now it's like, okay, he's a number 2, number 3 backup. You're not getting any on-field value, and you're getting the media circus still, especially after the pick is made, and that's kind of all the attention about the draft, especially now with him falling. All the questions of it, no one's going to care about your first round pick anymore. It's about who will Shedeur and what's his role and why did he fall and all that kind of stuff. So now it's like for a team, what is the value you get? None of the benefit of him being a starter that can help you win games and all of the media craziness and circus. So really interesting to see what happens there. But I know in your mock draft you had Will Howard. I had Quinn Ewers in mine, both still available. Could be the pick.
Yeah. Didn't I have Howard in the third though, and Harvey in the fourth?
Well, if Howard goes in the fourth, I think you get some good points.
I get partial credit for that. Once again, Harvey went. I couldn't believe Harvey. I mean, I realized why they Denver values those explosive runs. And they overlook the age and all like that. They want a guy that can home run for them. So, but I was surprised he came off in the second round. I, obviously had Harvey going in the fourth round there. But back to Shedeur real quick. The only thing I can figure out is several of the analysts made good points throughout the day and all. He's only played for his father. They kind of wonder how maybe he's going to take the coaching, and then obviously the personality and but man, I mean, as we talked before we got on there, someone could have made a good argument and I would listen to, and they try to convince me that he's not going to get drafted in the first 2 rounds. Okay, you may have been able to get me to that point, but sitting here after the second day and undrafted and no, it doesn't look like the end of that fall is going to come anytime soon at this point. I mean, heck, you're talking about a 4th round draft pick now as well too. That how much of that contract's even guaranteed, and that thing's probably going to have a split clause salary in it as well too, in case he goes on IR or that kind of thing. So a lot of these analysts are taking it personal. Mel Kiper's really taking it personal. Joe Klatt seems to be taking it personal. I don't think Daniel Jeremiah's taking it personal. All these people had him obviously early. I mean, you don't hear Dane Brugler, I don't think, bitching about it. He had him as his second quarterback there. I just think it's probably a lot of, the stuff that comes along with him. And look, I mean, this isn't a great quarterback class, and you can nitpick his tape to death. And, you could have been convinced that he might have been the 4th quarterback off the board after Dart and, Tyler Shuck. You could have made good arguments for that. But I mean, here we are in the 4th round. And as you kind of chuckled, I mean, you got Dylan Gabriel, 5'11", 1/8. Dylan Gabriel going to the Browns before Shedeur Sanders. So there's more to the story here, and I don't know. I guess at some point maybe it'll come out, but somebody's going to have to take him at some point.
You would think. We said that yesterday, though, so I assume he'll get drafted, but I'm not gonna bet my house, as you like to say, on anything, right? And I thought somebody on NFL Network, maybe it was Joe Klatt, maybe it was Daniel Jeremiah, made a good point. And you said this too, Dave. There weren't a ton of like overtly quarterback needy teams this year, and so only probably a couple of them really did their homework thoroughly on Shedeur Sanders. You got a lot of the league who just didn't really extensively dive into this guy, and then you're trying to take him, not really knowing him and knowing kind of the off-field stuff and personality, not going to get a good feel for that, and so teams probably stay away. And the teams that did do the homework on him have largely drafted quarterbacks. Pittsburgh has not, and that still puts them in play, I think, but. Not a lot of other quarterback needy teams have yet to address the position. The Saints took Shuck. The Giants took Jackson Dart. Of course, the Titans took Cam Ward. The Browns are still outstanding, but the Browns don't seem to have interest there, and neither do the Raiders. So we'll see. Who knows? But I think quarterback will be taken. I've always said this team will draft a quarterback at some point in the draft because they've done so much homework on the position, and Rooney's comments seem to hint at that. But we'll see who the name is by probably the 4th or 5th round tomorrow.
One other. I forgot which way I was going to go with this here. It was
And
going
by
to be
tomorrow, I mean today, Saturday.
Yeah.
Everyone gets it.
I was going to go something with add on to something Sanders there, but I lost my train of thought there. Overall, it's late. Been a couple of long days here, but I'm just I'm shocked overall. He's fallen. I don't know why some of these analysts are taking it so personal. I wish they talked more about the players getting drafted than continue to talk about Sanders at this point. They're not doing him. I don't think any service at this point and all right now. But at this point, I mean, I would be a bit surprised. No, I know where I was going to go. What about all the reports? I just thought about it. What about all the reports saying that Steelers were kind of split on Sanders in the first round? Well, if you're split on a guy in the first round and he's still there on the third round, you're going to be unsplit at that point. So that makes me feel like all that stuff was just garbage now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in hindsight, this team was not taking Shedeur in the first round, not in the third round. They were going elsewhere. So does not seem like he was in super true consideration to be the pick at 21, like was often reported.
If you had your druthers, what way would they go? And I guess it's time to kind of rattle off maybe some of the guys that maybe are still on the board now, outside of maybe quarterback.
Yeah, to talk other positions, receiver, I still think there's a good chance they do draft a receiver. We both had Dante Thornton from Tennessee in our mocks, and that's a guy that is big time projection, but big time upside. I think 4th round is probably where he's likely to go, but maybe 5th round. I think you had him in the 5th. I had him in the 4th. I know there's not a lot of obvious connections to him, but Aya Manor from Stanford still on the board. That's a guy I would have been okay taking at 83. I do wonder if some of the medical, some of the history of some knee issues are pushing him down, but that's a guy that, was a playmaker at Stanford. I thought really explosive throughout his route, had that big game against Travis Hunter in Colorado in 2023, and no better blocking receiver in the NFL or soon to be in the NFL, but college football in this year's class than Aya Manor. So that's a guy where maybe he gets day 3 if you do have some medical concerns. You say there's more comfortable, less risk, but still big time upside with him.
I agree. I think our boy Thornton could potentially be in play on Saturday. What other positions here? Any chance they double dip at this point on the defensive line?
Sure, always a chance. I think tougher with 6 picks, and I don't know if any trades are coming at this point, but not going to rule it out. Omar Khan did not. Joshua Former, I believe, still on the board right now. That's the guy that could play end, could play nose tackle, but squatty run defender. The other guys they brought in, JJ
Black.
Black from Iowa, Pegues from Ole Miss. Those guys make sense, as well as also Harrison Hunt from SMU. I don't know if it was a great scheme fit, but he came in for a visit as well.
Let's see. What about some corners still out there?
Yeah, I couldn't really find any corners that were great and more obvious connections to Pittsburgh. I mean, we can kind of go down the list here.
But didn't BJ Adams check quite a few boxes in the study?
I think I'd have to go back in my look for study there. There were a lot of guys who were just one box away. I believe he
Cone
was
out of Western Michigan, I believe, was one that just missed. BJ Adams, I think, was one in the study. I think we've talked a little bit about Za Frazier out of Texas San Antonio, but who else? I had Jordan Hancock on my list, but he's kind of that hybrid corner type safety. He'd be later round anyway if he came off the board. So I suppose it's not totally out of the question when it comes to corner, but it would probably be one of those ones that maybe are a box or two away from checking. Cone, BJ Adams.
I think Ransaw from Tulane is still out there. He's aggressive nickel safety hybrid. Robert Longerbeam from Rutgers, underweight, but that's a guy that I think had some good tape and ran well. So yeah, Za Frazier was on that list too. That toolsy long 1-year production ball skills type of corner. Yeah, Yeah, I don't think corner, but I'm not gonna stay 3. You're trying to find talent, guys that'll make your team, raise the floor of your roster. You're less focused on need than you are just getting some good players.
What about Baron Sorrell out of Texas at edge, a little bit undersized? That's probably what's caused him to slip a little bit. What if he's there in the 5th round?
Possibly, I think we talked about we neither of us put edge in our mock draft, but we
Right.
both thought they still could draft an edge rusher. And I think it was Jerry Dulac even made a reference they could have drafted an edge rusher in the 3rd round, which obviously they did not do. And I probably would not have supported doing that early. But I think we want to keep the cupboards full at pass rusher. They added a number 4 rusher in Preston Smith last year. They lost guys last year when Herbig went down, Highsmith went down. They were kind of really thin at outside linebacker, so they want to make sure they have really solid depth top to bottom because it is so important, the engines of their defense. So that makes sense. Some names I wrote down from my list in the morning. Antoine Powell Ryland from Virginia Tech, super productive, bendy, toolsy pass rusher, 16 sacks last year for the Hokies. Undersized, sawed off, sub 31-inch arms, and so that makes him more 3-4 outside linebacker. Q Robinson from Alabama. He's got size, he's got length, great special teams background, pedigree, had a good season in 2024. That makes sense. And then I also put Fidel Diggs from Syracuse. Similar. He's big, he's long, had a really good season in 2024, 14 tackles for a loss, 7.5 sacks. We put a 4th round grade on him. You can throw any edge rusher out there. Your guy, Johnny Walker from Missouri, maybe in the later round, 6th, 7th round. But edge rusher would not be surprising.
Yeah, Elijah Roberts they brought in. If he dropped a few pounds, he'd fit in perfectly.
Yeah, I know you liked him. You said he was more of a stand-up guy than really playing defensive end at SMU.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of tape of him standing on his feet.
Okay, so that also makes sense. It's one of those pre-draft. There aren't too many pre-draft visitors that have not been selected so far. Pittsburgh didn't do a lot of the day 3 type of guys, but he's one of them.
And Bruner.
Right,
Late.
Carson Bruner.
Yeah.
From Washington.
That could be a possibility.
Right, he was in my mock draft. Easy doc connects, obviously, with his father being Mark Bruner, former Steelers tight end and current area scout, so that makes sense. At safety, I put Donovan McMillan out of Pitt, who's a solid box safety, good tackler, good athlete, local, know him pretty well. He came in as a local visit, so that makes sense. Some other names, but a tight end, Jackson Haas from Georgia Tech, Gavin Bartholomew from Pitt. He was a local visit. That makes sense, and I'll see what other names I put on my list for the morning.
Isn't Hunter Wohler still out there?
Oh, yeah, and Craig Woodson. We should mention those 2 safeties too. Yeah, those are 2 of my guys, Wohler especially, and then with Woodson, I've mentioned this before, so it may be old news, but whenever he went to Cal, he was recruited by Jared Alexander, who's Pittsburgh's current defensive backs coach. So there's a nice connection there. Pittsburgh won safety. I think Wohler and Woodson make a lot of sense.
He might go undrafted here, but Sebastian Castro has got some physicality to him. Really kind of popped during that, I think, the East-West Shrine Bowl game.
Yeah, he's physical. He's intense. He just didn't test well at all. I think he ran slow. His jumps weren't good. So you got small and slow. And as you said, may fall out of the draft entirely. But if you want to take a 7th round pick on him, with me, like especially 6th, 7th round, I'm doing one of 2 things. I'm taking either the boom bust guy, the guy that's either going to fall out of just fall off my roster completely. But if I hit big, or I'm going to take the safe, quote unquote, safe guy, the low ceiling, high floor, quality special teamer, unlikely to ever be a starter type, but going to be competitive and hang around. And like I said, raise the floor of that room. I think Castro falls in that latter camp.
What do you think about the chances of one of these next 4 picks being a huge surprise to us?
It depends on how you define surprise.
We just talked about probably 30 guys, right?
Yeah, there'll probably be some curveball of a name that we're not talking about in that 6th, 7th round. You kind of get your Derwin Grays, your Spencer Andersons, who don't get discussed too much. Maybe an offensive lineman sneaks their way into the back end of this draft. Wouldn't be too mad about that. Don't know really what particular name to mention. There's that. I guess the West Virginia kid, Wyatt Mullum, is still out there, I believe. Mm-hmm. So that's a guy that played tackle, probably kicks inside the guard. That could be an option potentially. Some other names to mention, at least one name that came to mind at safety too. I like some of the safeties this year. Dan Jackson from Georgia, one of those high floor special team demons. I think that could be a selection in the 6th, 7th round.
All right. They obviously didn't move around. They didn't trade down in the first, and they didn't pick up. My gut feeling was wrong about them picking up. I wonder how hard they tried, maybe to get back. Obviously, tomorrow we'll have the wrap up press conference. I guess we should pass along the news about Derek Harmon's mother passing away too.
Yeah, that was reported by Jerry Dulac that I guess shortly after Harmon went to the hospital to tell his mother the news about him being drafted. She passed away. So heavy heart. It's been I'm sure a bittersweet last 24 plus hours for Derek Harmon and the Harmon family. So our condolences certainly with him and his family. I know he's in Pittsburgh right now. He stopped by, took some photos with Omar Khan, Art Rooney. No press conference. I'm not sure if that's going to happen later, or maybe just he'll speak during rookie minicamp 2 weeks from now. But yeah, it's tough. But obviously, the good thing is his mother was alive for him to be drafted, and so that's something to be said about that.
Absolutely. Okay. Busy day on Saturday. Get started a little bit earlier. Then we'll be chasing down the handful of undrafted free agents. I don't imagine that class is going to be very big, Alex. Probably 6 or 7, maybe 8 on the high side, a little, at least the way the roster looks like it's looking right now. Talk about what Art Rooney had to say about Aaron Rodgers.
Well, let me give you just a couple quick shots in the dark on UDFA predictions, which just anybody's guess at this point. But Jaquindon Jackson from Arkansas, Kanata Mumfield from Pitt. He has a Tom Arth tie. He was coached by Arth at Akron before he transferred into Pitt. Jack Conley from Boston College can play some tackle eligible. I think Sean Martin from West Virginia kind of feels like a Steelers UDFA selection. My deep sleeper selection is Rovell Carter from Ouachita Baptist. A couple other guys to mention. How about Jordan Clark from Notre Dame?
I was going to say, what about Jordan Clark? Yeah.
Yeah, the son of Ryan Clark. You're talking about those bloodlines. That makes a lot of sense. There's also the other Jordan corner, Jordan Oladokin, the brother of former Steelers Chris Oladokin. Actually has some good tape. We put a draftable grade on him. We have a scouting report on Jordan Oladokin. He had some splash plays at Bowling Green. Bam Martin Scott from South Carolina is a downhill thumper. Peyton Page from Clemson, defensive lineman they met with. So we'll see. Pittsburgh's UDFA class is usually pretty unimpressive, unexciting overall, but we'll pick up some guys. We'll talk about them.
All right. Well, either one of us hit at least one more pick in our mock drafts, and we've got some similar picks in there. I know we both have Thornton and Bruner in there, and I have Howard. You have Ewers.
Mm-hmm.
I have the Ohio State DB.
Jordan
Hancock, and you have the Pitt
Donovan McMillan, the safety in the 7th round. I hope so. I think, I'll do a little, not a big victory lap, but a small one. We both had Harmon in the 1st round, and then I had a running back at 83. I had Dylan Sampson. I do wonder if Johnson had been off the board as expected, would they have gone Sampson, Tootin, something else? We'll never know, obviously, but I think I've gotten a decent start to my mock draft.
Yeah, look, if I hit 2, I'm ecstatic.
Yeah.
If I hit 1, I mean, you hit 1, because your mock drafts can go off the rails. If you miss on your first one, especially position as well too, your whole mock draft can get screwed up that way.
So we both, I think, had a good feel for the direction this team would go. D-line first, running back pretty early, quarterback's going to be in that mid-round mix, and I think we're on a good track.
All right, tell the people about Aaron Rodgers and what Art Rooney had to say about that.
Yeah, Art Rooney said that still conversations happening. He still feels good about Rodgers eventually signing with Pittsburgh, but did kind of hint at maybe the first mention of maybe not a true deadline, but kind of the goal for Pittsburgh is getting Rodgers signed by the time the OTA sessions, the offseason programs really crank up was Rooney's term for it, which I would take it as really the start of OTAs. I think that's May 27th is the first voluntary practice with Pittsburgh, which was my personal deadline where I said, I think by OTAs, you got to be in around at this point. You really just can't leave the whole team out high and dry as they start coming together and really starting to build for the 2025 season. So Rooney's still showing optimism, but I think kind of setting up the first soft deadline that the team has really mentioned so far.
All right, we appreciate Mr. Rooney listening to the podcast and listening to Alex there. Pretty good couple of selections to start things off, right?
Yeah, I'm happy with it overall. Good value on Johnson. I did wonder if they would get somebody who was a little more dynamic, but I think the value on Johnson, the overall game, just the play as an actual runner made a lot of sense. He was my number 4 running back, and so you cannot be mad about that, getting that guy at 83, and then Harmon hits all the right notes in the first round. Like I said before, you got 2 guys who are 21 years old, just had coming off their best seasons, really breaking out best football ahead of them. I think it's what Pittsburgh is banking on with the projection. Again, not just where these guys are at, but where they're going to be.
Yeah, check the box, guys.
Definitely. So we'll come back on probably for Sunday morning. It'll be a late day Saturday with all the recap and reaction and everything like that, and talk about the final selections of the 2025 NFL Draft.
Along with the undrafted free agents and whatever Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan say during the wrap-up press conference as well, too. And let's see, it's about 1:30 in the morning, so we should
also just really quickly, no George Pickens movement. I mean,
right.
Never say never, but I would assume if they were going to do a deal with George Pickens, it would have happened by now. Not really a lot of value to trade him currently, so I imagine Pickens is staying.
Yeah, you're not going to trade him for a 4th. You better not,
right.
At this point. So, yeah, I think that window's closed on that at this point as well. Yeah, good point.
All right, we'll come back Sunday and talk about the rest.
All right, you can follow me on Twitter /X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button up right navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. Follow those directions. Site ran much better today. We're thankful for that. We stressed about that this morning, but handled all the traffic well. We appreciate all those that stopped by the site on Friday. Hopefully you do the same on Saturday. Alex and I'll be back on early Sunday morning to recap really the whole draft and everything else that has happened. So until then, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.